The stars twinkled against the black void of space as the massive ship glided silently toward the gleaming crystal planet. Inside the vessel, Dr. Alan Miller adjusted his tie one final time before the landing. As the only human at this year's Galactic Consortium meeting, he felt the weight of Earth's future on his shoulders. The ship docked with a gentle bump. Alan took a deep breath and stepped into the airlock. The air inside smelled faintly of ozone, adjusted to be breathable for all 17 species that made up the consortium. Alan had been Earth's representative for 3 years now, but the wonder of standing among beings from distant stars never faded. "Representative Miller, welcome back to Vectari Prime," said a tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 arms. This was Nix, a Sasic diplomat who had always been friendly to humans. "Thank you, Nix. How have you been?" Alan asked, falling into step beside her. "Curious, as always. The High Minister seems particularly proud this cycle. I wonder what announcements await us." They walked through massive hallways carved from a single crystal, the walls catching light and breaking it into rainbows. Other representatives nodded as they passed, some with tentacles, others with strange metal bodies, and a few that seemed like nothing more than clouds of gas in containment suits. The meeting chamber was an enormous dome with seats arranged in circles around a central platform. Alan found his place in the outer ring where the newest member species sat. Humans had only joined the consortium 50 years ago, after Vectari ships detected radio signals from Earth. The aliens had been shocked to learn how quickly humans had developed technology. Other species typically took thousands of years to progress from basic tools to spaceflight. Humans had done it in a few hundred. A hush fell over the crowd as High Minister Ixilnar floated to the center platform. The Vectari leader's crystalline body sparkled under the lights. The Vectari had been the first to reach the stars, or so they claimed, and had guided the younger races for nearly 10,000 years. "Esteemed representatives," Ixilnar began, voice resonating through the chamber without need for amplification. "We gather once more to celebrate the harmony of our 17 worlds. For 10,000 cycles we have watched the galaxy bloom with life. Our surveys of 14,000 worlds have confirmed what we have always known, that intelligent life follows our pattern, and that we Vectari were the first to touch the stars." Alan shifted in his seat. The Vectari pride in being first sometimes felt like arrogance, but who could blame them? They had united the galaxy and brought peace to all known worlds. "Our latest surveys reveal 12 new worlds with life still in early stages," Ixilnar continued. "We will watch and guide them, as is our sacred duty. Perhaps in another 1,000 cycles, they too will join our great consortium." As the minister droned on about star charts and trade agreements, Alan felt his pocket vibrate. He carefully slipped out his communication device, making sure no one noticed. Personal messages during the annual gathering were considered rude. The message was from Susan Wright, lead archaeologist at the human outpost on Proxima Centauri b, the nearest star system to Earth. The outpost had been built just 15 years ago as a mining operation. "Alan, you need to see this immediately. We've found something that changes everything." Alan's heart raced. Susan was not one for dramatic statements. If she thought something was important enough to message him during the gathering, it must be truly significant. The message continued. "We were extending the eastern mining tunnel when we found what looked like a cave. It's not a cave, Alan, it's built. There are walls with writing and technology unlike anything we've seen. And Alan, the dating puts it at 250,000 years old. Human writing, 250,000 years old, on a planet we just reached 15 years ago. Call me as soon as you can." Alan nearly dropped the device. If Susan was right, this discovery would shatter the consortium's understanding of history. Humans had only achieved spaceflight in the 20th century. How could there be human writing on another world 250,000 years ago? He looked up at Ixilnar, still speaking proudly about the Vectari's role as the first spacefaring race. What would the minister say if he knew that humans might have beaten them by thousands of years? "Representative Miller, are you well?" Nix whispered, noticing his pale face. "You look troubled." "I'm fine," Alan said quickly, tucking the device. Away. Just received some unexpected news from home. Nix tilted her reptilian head. Good news or bad? Alan wasn't sure how to answer. Important news. I may need to return to Earth sooner than planned. The Sasik nodded. The early departure. Procedures are simple enough. I can help if needed. Thank you, Nix. You've always been kind to us newcomers. As Ixilnar finished his speech, representatives began breaking into smaller groups for discussion. Alan sat still, mind racing. If humans had truly been to Proxima Centauri b thousands of years ago, why was there no record of it on Earth? What had happened to this ancient spacefaring civilization? And why had humans apparently started over, forgetting their past among the stars? He needed to see these ruins for himself. But first, he needed to be careful. The consortium, especially the Vektari, might not welcome proof that their entire understanding of galactic history was wrong. Alan's thoughts were interrupted when a shadow fell across him. He looked up to see the towering crystalline form of a Vektari official, Representative Miller, the crystal being chimed. High Minister Ixilnar requests your presence in the private chamber, immediately. Alan's stomach tightened. Had they somehow learned about Susan's discovery already? Of course, he said, rising from his seat. May I ask what this is regarding? The minister will explain, the official said, turning without another word. Alan followed through the winding crystal corridors. He wondered what to say if questioned. Should he reveal what Susan had found? Or should he keep quiet until humans had more time to study the ruins? The private chamber doors slid open, revealing High Minister Ixilnar, alone, crystal body glowing with inner light. Representative Miller, the minister's voice chimed. Thank you for joining me. I wanted to discuss something most unusual. Our sensors have detected anomalous energy readings from your outpost on Proxima Centauri b. Would you happen to know anything about this? Alan kept his face calm despite his racing heart. They were monitoring the outpost? I'm not aware of any unusual activities, Minister. It's primarily a mining operation. Ixilnar's crystalline form shimmered in patterns that Alan had learned to recognize as skepticism. Indeed. How curious. The readings began approximately 3 hours ago from the eastern section of your facility, exactly when Susan would have discovered the ruins. Alan swallowed hard. I'll certainly look into it when I return. Please do, the minister said. The consortium welcomes all discoveries, of course. We simply ask that member species share any significant findings, for the good of all. Of course, Minister, Alan replied, trying to sound sincere. Humans are honored to be part of the consortium. We would never hide anything important. As he spoke the words, Alan knew he was already planning to do exactly that, at least until he understood what Susan had found. The minister's sudden interest was too convenient, too targeted. Excellent, Ixilnar chimed. You may return to the gathering. Walking back to the chamber, Alan made a decision. He needed to leave for Proxima Centauri b immediately. Whatever Susan had found, the Vektari were already interested in it. And somehow Alan felt this wasn't simple scientific curiosity. He found Nix waiting near his seat. I believe I'll need that help with early departure procedures after all, he told her. A situation has arisen that requires my attention. Nix nodded. I suspected as much. Come, I'll help you file the forms. As they walked away, Alan glanced back at the High Minister, now surrounded by other Vektari officials, all shimmering in what seemed like agitated conversation. For the first time since joining the consortium, Alan wondered if Earth had made the right choice in trusting these ancient crystal beings who claimed to be the first among the stars. He needed to see those ruins. The entire history of humanity, and perhaps the galaxy, might depend on it. The small shuttle dropped through the atmosphere of Proxima Centauri b, buffeted by strong winds. Alan gripped his seat tightly as the craft shook. After 3 days of travel, he was finally arriving at the human outpost. He had left the consortium, gathering with only a brief explanation, claiming a family emergency. The lie troubled him, but he felt it necessary. Below, the outpost appeared as a cluster of dome-shaped buildings nestled between rocky hills. The planet was not as hospitable as Earth. Its reddish sky and thin atmosphere required humans to use breathing masks when outside, but it had valuable minerals that made the outpost profitable. As the shuttle landed on the central pad, Alan saw Susan waiting for him. She wore the standard blue uniform of the scientific team, her blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. The worry on her face was clear even from a distance. "Thank goodness you're here," Susan said, as Alan stepped onto the landing pad. She handed him a breathing mask. "Did anyone follow you?" Alan secured the mask over his face before answering. "I don't think so, but the Vectari knew about the energy readings from your discovery before you even messaged me. They're monitoring this outpost somehow." Susan's eyes widened. "Then we need to hurry. I haven't told the full team what we found yet. Only Jack knows everything." She led Alan through the main dome and into a corridor that sloped downward. They passed miners and technicians who nodded respectfully at Alan, the highest-ranking Earth official in the system. None of them seemed aware of the potentially history-changing discovery beneath their feet. "We found it 3 days ago," Susan explained as they walked deeper into the complex. "We were extending the eastern tunnel, looking for a new vein of rhodium. Jack's equipment detected an unusual hollow space behind a rock wall. We thought it was a natural cave." They reached a security door where Susan pressed her palm against a scanner. The door slid open to reveal an elevator. "We've restricted access to the site," she said as they entered. "Official reason is potential structural instability." The elevator descended for nearly a minute. Alan felt the weight of rock above them, and a growing sense that whatever waited below would change everything. When the doors opened, they were in a dimly lit tunnel that looked different from the mining passages above. The walls were smoother, more deliberate in their construction. Jack Peterson waited for them, a stocky man with a red beard and serious eyes. "Dr. Miller, good to see you," Jack said, shaking Alan's hand firmly. "I wish it were under different circumstances." "Show me," Alan said simply. Jack nodded and led them deeper into the tunnel. "We've been mapping the complex. It extends for at least 3 kilometers in each direction. This isn't just a single building. It's an entire facility of some kind." The tunnel opened into a large chamber that took Alan's breath away. The ceiling rose at least 15 meters high, and the walls were covered with symbols, lines and curves that somehow felt familiar though Alan had never seen them before. "This is what convinced us it was human in origin," Susan said, pointing to a section of the wall. "These symbols share structural similarities with very ancient human writing systems from Earth. Not identical, but related, like they evolved from a common source." Alan approached the wall, his fingers hovering just above the symbols. "And you're certain about the dating?" Jack held up a tablet. "We've used every method available to us. Carbon dating of organic residue found in the mortar between stone blocks, mineral degradation patterns, background radiation absorption. Every test gives us the same approximate range, 240,000 to 260,000 years old." "That's impossible," Alan whispered, though he knew these were 2 of Earth's best scientists. Humans at that time were still using stone tools on Earth. "Apparently not all of them," Susan said quietly. "Come see the next chamber." They walked through an archway into an even larger space. In the center stood what could only be described as a control panel, a curved console with what looked like screens, now dark and dead. But what drew Alan's eye was against the far wall, a spacesuit, unmistakably designed for a human body but unlike any suit Alan had ever seen. It seemed both ancient and advanced at the same time. The material looked like metal, but flowed like fabric where it had decayed. "There's no doubt it was made for a human body," Susan said. 2 arms, 2 legs, head size consistent with human proportions. "We found remains inside." "Human remains?" Alan asked, his voice barely audible. Jack nodded. "DNA testing confirms it. Human, female, about 30 years old when she died." Alan approached the suit slowly, as if in a dream. "How did this happen?" How could humans have been here so long ago without any record of it on Earth? We have a theory, Susan said, leading him to another wall covered in symbols. We've only translated fragments so far, but these appear to be records of some kind. They mention Earth repeatedly along with many other star systems. Jack continued. From what we can piece together, these weren't colonists. They were running from something. Running? Alan asked. From what? We don't know yet, Susan admitted, but there are references to the enemy and the darkness between stars. Whatever it was, it terrified them enough to establish outposts across multiple systems. Alan looked around the chamber with new eyes. Have you found anything like this? On other planets? That's the thing, Jack said, checking something on his tablet. After Susan found this, I ran a search for similar energy patterns on other outpost worlds. We've got readings that match on 7 other planets in nearby systems. 7? Alan felt dizzy with the implications. Susan nodded. All at exactly the same depth below the surface, all with the same energy signature. I think they were built as a network of some kind. We need to tell Earth, Alan said automatically, then hesitated. But if the Vectari are monitoring us... There's something else, Susan said, her voice lower now. Yesterday we found a sealed chamber deeper in the complex. Inside was some kind of device, still active after all this time. When we approached it, it responded with light patterns. You turned it on? Alan asked, alarmed. We didn't touch it, Jack clarified. It activated on its own when we entered the room, almost like it was waiting for humans to find it. Susan touched Alan's arm. That's what caused the energy spike the Vectari detected. And after it activated, we found this. She led Alan to a small side chamber where a holographic image floated in the center, a star map showing hundreds of systems with certain stars marked in red. It's a warning, Alan, Susan said gravely. Those red stars mark systems where the enemy was detected, and one of those red stars is Vectari Prime. Alan stared at the map in shock. Are you saying the Vectari are this enemy our ancestors were running from? I don't know, Susan admitted. But I think we need to learn more before we reveal everything to the consortium. If the Vectari are somehow connected to whatever drove humans to build these outposts and then seemingly abandon them, a loud alarm suddenly blared through the complex, cutting her off. Jack rushed to a communication panel on the wall. Security breach in the main dome, he reported, face grim. Multiple unidentified ships have entered atmosphere and are demanding to inspect the facility. The Vectari, Alan said, feeling cold dread wash over him. They must have followed me after all. Susan looked at the ancient technology surrounding them. What do we do? Alan made a quick decision. Download everything you've translated, all the images, all the data. We need to get it to Earth. I'll go up and try to stall them. As Susan and Jack rushed to gather the data, Alan took one last look at the ancient spacesuit, at the remains of a human who had died hundreds of thousands of years ago, on a planet that modern humans had only reached 15 years ago. Whatever had happened in the ancient past, it seemed history was about to repeat itself. And Alan had the terrible feeling that Earth wasn't ready for what was coming. Alan hurried through the tunnels toward the surface, his mind racing. Behind him, Susan and Jack worked frantically to download the ancient data. The alarm continued to blare throughout the complex, its harsh sound echoing off the walls. When he reached the main dome, Alan found the outpost staff in a state of controlled panic. Through the transparent ceiling, he could see 3 Vectari ships hovering above, sleek crystal vessels that shimmered in the reddish light of Proxima Centauri. Status report, Alan demanded, approaching the security chief, a tall woman named Lisa Brown. 3 Vectari vessels entered our airspace without permission 10 minutes ago, Lisa reported. They're demanding immediate access to inspect the facility. They claim to be investigating dangerous energy readings. Have they made any aggressive moves? Alan asked. Not yet, but they're not taking no for an answer. They say they'll land with or without our permission in 5 minutes. Alan nodded, trying to project calm he didn't feel. Open a communication channel. A large screen on the wall flickered to life. revealing the crystalline form of a Vektari. Official. Alan recognized him as Zextil, an advisor to High Minister Ixilnar. Representative Miller, the Vektari chimed, its voice creating strange harmonics. This is an unexpected surprise. We were told you had returned to Earth for a family emergency. My plans changed, Alan said evenly. May I ask why consortium vessels are making demands of a sovereign human outpost? The crystal being shifted, light playing through its transparent body. Our sensors detected dangerous energy patterns emanating from your facility. As the eldest member of the consortium, it is our duty to investigate potential threats. We're conducting standard mining operations, Alan lied smoothly. Any unusual readings are likely from our new extraction equipment. Our scans indicate the energy source is 200 meters below your current mining level. Zextil countered. We insist on inspecting this anomaly immediately. Their scans were precise. Too precise. Alan needed time for Susan and Jack to finish downloading the data and find a way to get it to Earth. As Earth's representative to the consortium, I must formally protest this violation of our territorial sovereignty, Alan said, falling back on diplomatic procedure. Any inspection must be scheduled through proper channels, with appropriate documentation. The Vektari's crystalline form flickered with what Alan had learned to recognize as impatience. This is a safety matter that overrides standard protocols. We will land in 3 minutes. Please prepare your landing pad. The screen went dark before Alan could respond. They're coming in whether we like it or not, Lisa said grimly. Should we prepare to defend the facility? Alan shook his head. We can't start a war with the consortium, not yet. He lowered his voice. But we need to buy time. Implement Security Protocol 5. Lisa's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. Protocol 5 was rarely used, a non-lethal defensive measure designed to slow intruders without causing harm. Small pulse generators would temporarily disrupt electrical systems, including the crystalline communication networks the Vektari used within their bodies. That will only delay them for an hour at most, Lisa warned. An hour might be enough, Alan said. I need to get back down to the excavation site. As Alan turned to leave, a young technician approached him urgently. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. Priority channel. Alan frowned. Earth wouldn't use the priority channel unless something serious had happened. Put it through to my personal device. The message was from the Earth Defense Council, marked with the highest security clearance. Alan's stomach tightened as he read it. Similar Vektari ships had appeared at 7 other human outposts across different star systems, all locations, where Jack had detected energy signatures matching the ancient ruins. This wasn't a coincidence. The Vektari knew exactly what they were looking for. Alan rushed back to the elevator. As he descended, he felt the subtle vibration of the Vektari ships landing on the outpost's roof. Time was running out. When he reached the ancient facility, Susan and Jack were still working at the control panel, their faces tense with concentration. The Vektari are landing now, Alan informed them. We've implemented delaying tactics, but they'll be down here within the hour. What's your progress? We've downloaded about 70% of the data, Susan replied, not looking up from her work. But there's something else you need to see. She led Alan to a new section of wall they had uncovered. Unlike the other walls covered in symbols, this one held images, pictures etched into the stone that told a story. We think this is a historical record, Susan explained. Look at this sequence. The images showed human-like figures living on a planet that was clearly Earth. Then came pictures of ships leaving Earth, traveling to other worlds. Next was a disturbing image of crystalline beings emerging from what looked like a tear in space. The final images showed humans fighting these crystal entities, then the humans fleeing to various planets and building underground facilities. There's our answer, Susan said quietly. The ancient humans were running from the Vektari or something connected to them. But why would the Vektari attack humans? Alan asked. And why claim they were the first spacefaring race if they knew humans had been out here before them? Before Susan could answer, Jack called out from the control panel, I've got it. The final files are downloading now. Suddenly, the lights in the ancient facility flickered, and a low hum began to build around them. The walls themselves seemed to vibrate with energy. "What's happening?" Alan asked, alarmed. Jack checked his instruments. "Energy levels are spiking throughout the complex. It's like the whole facility is waking up." The holographic star map in the center of the room expanded suddenly, growing to fill the entire chamber. Red warning lights flashed on multiple star systems, including their current location. "It's reacting to the Vectari ships," Susan realized. "The facility has some kind of defense system that activates when it detects them." A new hologram appeared, a human figure dressed in ancient but advanced clothing. Though the image was translucent and flickered with age, the figure spoke with surprising clarity in a language none of them understood. Yet somehow, Alan felt he grasped the meaning. "It's a warning," he said, though he couldn't explain how he knew. "And instructions." The figure pointed to a section of wall that suddenly slid open, revealing a hidden chamber. Inside was a small pedestal holding what looked like a crystal disc about the size of Alan's palm. "Take it," Susan urged. "I think it's meant for you." As Alan approached the pedestal, his security communicator beeped urgently. Lisa's voice came through, tense and hurried. "Dr. Miller, the Vectari have breached our defenses. They're moving through the complex faster than we expected. They'll reach the excavation site in less than 5 minutes." Alan grabbed the crystal disc. It felt warm in his hand, almost alive. "We need to get this data to Earth. Is there any way out besides the main elevator?" Jack nodded. "There's an emergency escape tunnel that leads to the surface about 1 kilometer from the main dome. We can take the maintenance shaft." "Go," Alan ordered. "Take the disk and all the data you've downloaded. Get to the communication outpost on the far side of the settlement and transmit everything to Earth." "What about you?" Susan asked. "I'll stay and try to slow them down," Alan said. "As Earth's representative, I might be able to delay them with diplomatic talk." Susan looked like she wanted to argue, but nodded instead. "Be careful. We still don't know exactly what we're dealing with." As Susan and Jack gathered their equipment and headed for the maintenance shaft, Alan turned to face the entrance. He could hear the faint sound of the Vectari approaching, a strange crystalline chiming that echoed through the tunnels. He took one last look at the ancient human facility, at the warnings left by ancestors no one remembered. Then he stepped forward to confront beings that might have driven humanity from the stars once before. Whatever happened next, Earth needed to know the truth. Alan stood alone in the ancient chamber as the sounds of approaching Vectari grew louder. He positioned himself in front of the wall with the historical images, hoping to block them from view. The last thing he wanted was for the Vectari to see depictions of themselves as ancient enemies of humanity. The humming of the facility had grown stronger. Lights flickered along the walls, systems awakening after lying dormant for hundreds of thousands of years. Alan wondered what other defenses might be built into this place. Heavy footsteps echoed from the tunnel, and then 5 Vectari entered the chamber. Their crystalline bodies cast rainbow reflections across the walls. 4 of them were clearly guards, their forms bulkier and less transparent than typical Vectari. The 5th was Zextil himself, his crystal body pulsing with inner light. "Representative Miller," Zextil chimed. "You are interfering with an official consortium investigation." Alan stood his ground. "This is a human facility on a human world. The consortium has no authority to conduct uninvited investigations here." The Vectari leader's form shimmered in what Alan recognized as anger. "This is not a human facility. These ruins predate your species' arrival in this system." "That's where you're wrong," Alan said. "These aren't alien ruins. They're human ruins, built by our ancestors 250,000 years ago." Alan watched carefully for a reaction. If the Vectari truly knew nothing about ancient humans in space, this revelation should shock them. But Zextil showed no surprise. "A ridiculous claim. Humans achieved spaceflight less than 200 years ago. You were primitive beings when the Vectari first touched the stars. We have proof," Alan insisted. "Carbon dating, DNA evidence, writing systems connected to ancient Earth languages." "Enough!" Zextil's voice rang sharply through the chamber. Where are the scientists who were working here? Our scans detected 3 humans in this facility. So, they knew about Susan and Jack. Alan needed to buy them more time to escape. They've gone to prepare a formal report for the Earth government, Alan said, as is proper protocol when dealing with archaeological discoveries of this magnitude. Sextil moved closer, looming over Alan. You will tell us exactly what was found here, and you will tell us now. Before Alan could respond, a low rumble shook the chamber. The walls vibrated, and the symbols etched into them began to glow with a soft blue light. One of the Vectari guards made a sharp sound, a warning perhaps, and moved toward the exit. But before any of them could leave, hidden panels in the walls slid open and beams of energy shot out, surrounding each Vectari in a bubble of shimmering light. The crystalline beings froze in place, trapped within these energy fields. Their bodies still shimmered with internal light, but they could no longer move or speak. Alan backed away, equally surprised by this development. The facility had defended itself, activating some ancient security system triggered by the Vectari presence. Taking advantage of the moment, Alan hurried to the control panel where Susan and Jack had been working. A small data device still sat in one of the slots, a backup copy they must have left for him. He grabbed it and headed for the maintenance shaft. Just as he reached the hidden doorway, a voice spoke. Not the Vectari, who remained frozen in their energy prisons, but a new voice that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Guardian protocol activated, threat contained, emergency message transmitted. The voice spoke in perfect modern English, which should have been impossible for a 250,000-year-old system. Before Alan could process this, the entire facility shuddered again, more violently this time. He needed to get out immediately. Alan rushed into the maintenance shaft and began climbing the narrow ladder that led to the surface. Behind him, he heard more rumbling and what sounded like machinery activating. When Alan finally emerged on the planet's surface, he was a kilometer from the main outpost, as Jack had said. He fitted his breathing mask and looked back toward the human settlement. What he saw stopped him cold. The ground above the ancient facility was shifting, opening like petals of a flower. From this opening, a massive structure was rising, a tower of some kind, silver-white and gleaming in the red sunlight. It extended higher and higher, reaching perhaps 100 meters into the sky. At the top of the tower, a dish-shaped device began to rotate, pointing up toward the stars. A beam of blue-white light shot from it into space. Alan's communicator beeped. He answered quickly, hoping it was Susan or Jack. "Alan, thank goodness you're alive." It was Susan's voice. "We made it to the communication outpost. Are you safe?" "I'm outside," Alan reported, still watching the tower in awe. "Susan, the facility activated some kind of defense system. It trapped the Vectari in energy fields, and now it's raised some kind of transmission tower." "We know," Susan replied. "Similar structures are emerging at all 7 locations where we detected the energy signatures. Each one is sending a beam into space. Earth defense is picking up massive energy readings." "Have you transmitted the data to Earth?" Alan asked. "Yes, but there's something else you need to know. The crystal disk you found, Jack figured out how to access it. It contains a message, Alan. A recording from the past." "What does it say?" "It's better if you see it yourself. Can you make it to the communication outpost?" Alan checked his position. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. What about the Vectari?" "More of their ships have entered the system," Susan said, her voice tense. "A lot more. Earth defense is monitoring at least 30 vessels approaching Proxima Centauri b. They're calling it a fleet." Alan's stomach tightened. "I'm on my way. Don't wait for me if things get worse. Take the emergency shuttle and get that disk to Earth." He began jogging toward the communication outpost, pushing his pace despite the thin atmosphere that made breathing difficult, even with the mask. Around him, the alien landscape of Proxima Centauri b stretched out in rocky plains under the reddish sky. As he ran, Alan couldn't help looking back at the towering structure that had emerged from the ancient facility. Its design was both beautiful and somehow familiar, as if he had seen it before in a dream or forgotten memory. What were these ruins, really? Why had ancient humans built them and then apparently abandoned them? And most importantly, what connection? Did the Vectari have to humanity's forgotten past among the stars? The communication outpost appeared on the horizon, a small cluster of buildings with a large dish antenna on top. As Alan approached, he saw the small emergency shuttle parked nearby, ready for a quick escape if needed. Susan was waiting at the door, her face tight with worry. "Hurry," she said as soon as Alan was within earshot. "Jack has the disc ready to display, and Alan, it changes everything we thought we knew." Alan followed her inside, still catching his breath from the long run. In the main room, Jack stood next to a small projector. The crystal disc from the ruins sat at its center, glowing softly. "It's some kind of quantum storage medium," Jack explained, "far beyond our current technology, but it was designed to be compatible with human devices, almost as if they knew we would eventually find it." "Show me," Alan said. Jack nodded and touched a control. Above the disc, a holographic image formed, a woman in strange clothing, her face solemn but determined. When she spoke, it was in perfect modern English. "To our descendants, if you are seeing this message, then the Devourers have returned. We had hoped this day would never come." Alan, Susan, and Jack stared at the holographic woman. Her image flickered slightly but remained clear enough to see her determined expression. She wore a uniform unlike anything in human history, with symbols that matched those on the walls of the ancient facility. "My name is Commander Eliza Ward," the woman continued. "I am, or was, the leader of the 7th Defense Outpost in what you may now call the Proxima Centauri system. The date by the calendar you might use would be approximately 248,000 years before your present day." Alan felt a chill run down his spine. Here was proof, absolute proof, that humans had been among the stars long before modern history recorded. "We were once a great civilization," Eliza continued. "Humanity spread across 500 star systems. We built wonders, created technologies beyond imagining, and lived in peace for thousands of years. Until the Devourers found us. The hologram shifted to show crystalline beings emerging from what looked like tears in the fabric of space itself. They came from between the dimensions, beings of pure energy who took physical form by creating crystalline bodies. At first they seemed peaceful, eager to learn about our universe. We welcomed them, shared our knowledge, our worlds. That was our mistake. The hologram showed planets being surrounded by crystal ships, then surfaces cracking as energy was drained from entire worlds. The Devourers feed on energy, all forms of energy, including the life force of organic beings. They consume stars, planets, and people alike. They cannot be reasoned with or stopped by conventional means. After they had gained our trust, they began to feed. Billions died in the first wave of their harvest. Jack shook his head in disbelief. "She's describing the Vectari. This can't be coincidence." The hologram continued. "We fought back with everything we had. For nearly a century the war raged across the stars. But for every devourer we destroyed, more would emerge from their dimension. We were losing, not just battles, but our entire civilization." Eliza's face grew more solemn. "Our scientists made a terrible discovery. The Devourers were not just feeding on our universe, they were changing it. Each feeding altered the fundamental constants of physics in subtle ways. If they continued, all life as we know it would eventually become impossible." Susan gasped. "That would explain why they want to erase all evidence of their past. If other species knew what they were doing to our universe." "In our darkest hour, we created a final solution," the holographic Eliza continued. "We could not defeat the Devourers directly, but we could hide from them and prepare for their eventual return. We built these outposts on carefully selected worlds, equipped with technology that could lie dormant for hundreds of thousands of years if necessary." The image shifted to show the tower that had emerged from the ruins, identical to the one now standing outside. Each outpost contains a quantum beacon. When activated, they link together to create a dimensional barrier, a shield that can temporarily block the Devourers from accessing our realm. This buys time, but is not a permanent solution. Eliza's expression turned pained. The hardest part of our plan was what we had to do to humanity itself. To truly hide from the Devourers, we had to remove all evidence of our advanced civilization. Most of our people chose to return to Earth, where we used technology to carefully reset human development. Our memories, our history, our technology, all of it erased so that humanity could start fresh, hidden from the Devourer's senses. Alan felt as if the floor had dropped from beneath him. Our entire history, rewritten by choice. A small group of us remained behind, Eliza continued, to maintain these outposts and monitor for the Devourer's return. We knew we would not live to see it, but our DNA and our knowledge were preserved in these systems, waiting for our descendants to rediscover them when the time came. The hologram shifted again, showing star maps and technical diagrams. Within this message are the specifications for weapons that can fight the Devourers, and coordinates for other outposts scattered across the galaxy with more resources and knowledge. You must act quickly. Once the beacons activate, the Devourers will know their ancient enemy has returned. Eliza's image grew larger, her eyes seeming to look directly at them. Remember, the Devourers can take many forms and will try to deceive you. They may claim to be peaceful, to be teachers or guides. Do not trust any crystalline beings, no matter what they call themselves. The fate of not just humanity, but all organic life in our universe depends on stopping them. The message ended, the hologram fading away and leaving the three humans in stunned silence. The quiet was broken by an urgent beeping from the communication console. Jack rushed to check it. "It's from Earth Defense Command," he reported. "The Vecatari fleet has established orbit around Proxima Centauri B. They're demanding we shut down the towers immediately, or they'll open fire on the outpost." They're afraid, Susan realized. The towers are actually hurting them somehow. Alan made a quick decision. Send all of this data to Earth immediately. The message, the technical specifications, everything. Then we need to evacuate. As Jack worked on transmitting the data, Susan checked the external cameras. "More towers are rising all over the planet," she reported. "It's like the whole world was one giant outpost, just waiting to be activated." The ground shuddered beneath them. Outside, the sky was filling with Vectari ships, dozens of them, their crystalline hulls catching the red sunlight. "Data transmission complete," Jack announced. "Earth has received everything." "Good," Alan said. "Now we need to—" He was interrupted by a blinding flash of light outside. One of the Vectari ships had fired on the nearest tower, but instead of destroying it, the energy beam was absorbed, making the tower glow brighter. "The towers are drawing power from their weapons," Susan said in amazement. "Just like Eliza said, they feed on energy, and the defenses use that against them." More Vectari ships opened fire, but each attack only strengthened the towers. The beams shooting into space grew brighter, and suddenly, a shimmering curtain of energy began to form in the sky above them, spreading outward from each beam. "The dimensional barrier," Alan whispered. "It's working." Their communicator crackled to life. It was Earth Defense Command. "Proxima team, are you there? We're seeing similar phenomena at all 7 outpost worlds. Energy readings are off the charts." "We're here," Alan responded. "The ancient defensive system is activating. It's creating some kind of barrier against the Vectari." "Not just at Proxima," came the reply. "Reports are coming in from across consortium space. Every Vectari ship is being affected. They're trying to retreat, but many are being caught in the energy field." Alan looked at Susan and Jack. "This isn't over. According to Eliza, this is just a temporary measure, buying us time to prepare." Susan nodded. "And we have a lot to prepare for. If humanity fought this war before, we can fight it again," Jack finished. "But this time, we know what we're up against." Outside, the dimensional barrier had fully formed, a shimmering dome of energy covering the sky. The Vectari ships caught within it were immobilized, just like their ground forces had been in the ancient facility. Alan looked up at the barrier, then at the tower that had maintained its silent vigil for 250,000 years, waiting for humans to return to the stars. For 10,000 years the Vectari told everyone they were the first, he said quietly. That they ruled the stars before any other species had even looked up at the night sky. And all this time they were hiding from the truth, Susan added. That humans were here first and that we were the only ones who ever stood against them. As if in answer, the tower pulsed with renewed energy, sending another surge into the barrier above. The ancient human outpost, buried and forgotten for countless generations, was fulfilling its purpose at last. The stars had never belonged to the Vectari, and now humanity had returned to reclaim them.